Lead and copper sampling plans for non-transient non-community water systems school. Here are some of the frequent acronyms you will see within the lead and copper sampling plan presentation, as well as in various guidance and templates. Many of the requirements completed under the Board of Education regulations can be used to develop your lead and copper ruled sampling plan. However, you must have a separate plan because there are clear differences between the rules. We recently revised our templates to be more user-friendly. It is very important to read and understand all aspects of the plan since you are responsible for its implementation. Requirements for all community and non-transient non-community water systems. This includes general water system information, distribution maps, and materials evaluation. Designations of sample sites, monitoring schedule, sampling protocols, sample and validation procedures, action plans, and lead consumer notice. Licensed daycares that are not classified as non-transient, non-community water systems may also be required to submit plans in order to receive their drinking water certification. New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection guidance and templates on our website contains all required components. Water systems are required to use the templates, however, additional information may be necessary. This slide outlines each required section, which we will discuss in more detail further in the presentation. Also note, if you are not subject to the Board of Education regulations, you are still held to these requirements under the lead and copper rule. Your sampling plan must include all general water system information. This slide details the general water system information that must be included within your lead and copper sampling plan. Ensure your plan identifies the number of service connections, which is where the pipe connecting to your facility to a larger water main or to your well enters the school facility. In most cases, this will be 1. Population that must be noted is the non-transient non-community water system population. Do not include the transient non-community water system population. Most schools do not have bulk purchasers or wholesalers unless the school has an emergency connection. If your system falls into this group, be sure to include the contact information of your wholesaler. Signatures are necessary to document each party listed has reviewed, approved, and certified the information provided is correct within the sampling plan. Sources and treatment facilities. Facility IDs are available in Drinking Water Watch. Note that emergency interconnections may not be in Drinking Water Watch. Therefore, insert the name of the facility in lieu of the facility ID. If multiple supplying sources combine prior to the distribution system, but with no treatment, enter the facility ID for the common header. An example of an additional treatment location would be a booster pump station for orthophosphate within the distribution system. We do not anticipate to see additional treatment components beyond the treatment plant in a school facility. Distribution map. The distribution system map must clearly identify the following water system components listed above. Non-transient, non-community water systems with a significant number of taps may contact the NJDEP to request a summary of drinking water outlet tap locations. For example, number of taps per floor is acceptable in lieu of identifying all individual taps on the distribution system map. Most schools will only have 1 pressure zone, so this does not need to be illustrated. Non-transient, non-community water systems may submit a detailed sketch in lieu of a map. Schools can use the floor plans developed under the Board of Education regulations to satisfy this requirement. Here is an example of a distribution map of a child care and/or pre-kindergarten facility. This map identifies all water outlets within the facility and has the outlets typically used for human consumptions labeled as their sample sites. Moreover, the map identifies the point of entry to the facility and the flow of cold water. Monitoring schedule. The plan must designate the current monitoring schedule requirements, including frequency of sampling, the months where the samples must be collected, and the number of samples to be collected. This information is also available on Drinking Water Watch. Materials evaluation. A materials evaluation of the entire distribution system is required to identify a pool of targeted sample sites that meet tier criteria for lead and copper sampling. If you are subject to Board of Education regulations, this is referred to as your plumbing profile. As discussed in the lead and copper rule overview presentation, a materials evaluation is required for each school. The water system must identify if the following categories of piping and plumbing materials are present in the distribution system. Keep in mind, as additions were added and plumbing changes were made, there may be different materials throughout your school. The following are questions you should ask yourself when compiling your lead and copper sampling plans. Did you evaluate your entire distribution system? The system should be evaluating their entire system, not just the previously sampled sites or the sites used in their current sampling pool. A system must determine if there are other sites meeting the tier requirements. Non-transient, non-community water systems are required to identify and use all outlets used for human consumption and identify their tiers if they are different. Other taps can be used for alternates, but make sure primary sites are of human consumption taps if possible. The state has begun establishing a protocol for tracking lead service lines throughout the state of New Jersey. Though lead service lines and/or lead goosenecks may not be applicable to many schools, it is still worth noting. Indicate how the water system conducted the materials evaluation. The plumbing profile, or the materials evaluation survey for non-community water systems, form BWSE 17, will clearly outline the specific materials in your school. This must be used to select your lead and copper sampling sites. In the sampling plan, you must indicate how the materials evaluation was conducted. Tiers and sampling. Each water system must identify sample sites that meet tier requirements and sample procedures set forth in the lead and copper rule. As we review sampling plans, we have determined many water systems have changed their sample site locations over the years and are not sampling from the appropriate sites. How many samples does the water system need? This chart further explains the minimum number of sites to be sampled within a water system's sampling pool. It is required and beneficial to have a larger pool to provide alternate sites in the event that a site is decommissioned. This ensures the required amount of samples are taken for the monitoring period. Systems are divided into 3 size categories under the lead and copper rule. The size of the system is dependent of the number of people served. Small is less than 3,300. Medium is between 3,301 to 50,000. Large is greater than 50,000 people served. Note, the number of required samples are different from the New Jersey Board of Education's lead sampling regulations, where you are required to sample from every drinking water outlet. For the lead and copper rule, you are required to sample from the required number of sites based on population. If you elect to collect more than required, this must be clearly outlined within your sampling plan. Sample sites. The sampling pool must be significantly large. The only 2 reasons under the lead and copper rule a sample site can no longer be used is if the site no longer meets the tier criteria, for example, plumbing changes, or the site is no longer accessible. The following tier criteria are used for the non-transient, non-community water systems. Tier 1 sites must be sampled first, prior to Tier 2 sites or non-tier designated sites. Non-transient, non-community sample site tier category. Non-transient, non-community water systems will only use categories 10 through 14. A water system must aim to target all Tier 1 sites. These categories are used to better distinguish sample sites. School facilities are considered non-residential buildings. Please note, there may be situations when 1 or 2 sites are selected to be sampled that may not meet the highest tier. We will go through some examples in the next few slides. Example 1. A non-transient community water system with a population of 250. The system contains 2 buildings, one with 2 taps, built within 1985 with lead solder, and one with 10 taps, built within 1982 with lead solder. The system is required to collect 10 samples, 2 from 2 taps within the first building, built within 1985, and 8 samples from the second building, built within 1982. When on reduce, the water system will sample 2 taps within the first building and 3 taps within the second building. Example 2. A non-transient, non-community water system serves 1,150 people and has an original building with copper piping and lead solder from 1985, and in 1990 added 3 new wings. The water flows through the original building to the 3 new wings. The original building has 10 taps, and each wing has 10 taps, for a total of 40 taps. The water system is required to collect 20 samples. The water system must collect 10 from the original building, 3 from 2 of the new wings, and 4 from the third wing. The sample sites need to be representative of the distribution system, since the water flows through the copper piping with lead solder prior to entering the 3 additional new wings. When on reduce, the water system must collect 7 from the original building and 1 sample from each new wing. Here is an example of a school. The school's original building was built in 1979 with copper plumbing and lead solder, and all sample sites located in this section of the school are considered Tier 2 sites. The 1984 edition of the school also has copper plumbing and lead solder. However, the sampling sites identified in this edition are considered Tier 1 sites. The 1990 and the 1995 editions have no lead present in the interior plumbing, so any sample sites located in those 2 editions do not meet the tier criteria. This is why it is important to document the year each edition is constructed and where lead is present in the interior plumbing. Pay close attention to this information when designating sample sites and assigning the appropriate tier classification. Additionally, it is important to have an understanding of the flow of water throughout the school. If the water flows through the original building to go to the new additions, then it may be necessary to collect 1 sample from each new addition to show if the water in the new addition is impacted by the original building's plumbing infrastructure. Be sure to provide justification for sample site selection. Sampling instructions. Sample collection procedures must be provided to the individual collecting the sample, and a copy of these instructions must be enclosed within the plan. The instructions provided must be in accordance with the lead and copper rule. Illustrate how the system notifies the sample collector of the designated sample site locations. Moreover, how is the system ensuring the collector is adhering to the 6-hour minimum stagnation time? If the water system is a non-transient, non-community, and operates 24 hours, outline procedures to ensure the water stands motionless in the area of the tap for a minimum of 6 hours, or identify the times and locations that will likely result in the longest standing time. Sampling procedures. The plan and/or sample instructions must include the following in regards to the sampling of lead and copper sample sites. Whichever site is chosen, the tap must meet the following criteria. It cannot have a point-of-use treatment installed. For example, Brita, pour-on-tap, water filter, water coolers with filters installed, etc. Some schools choose to install filters on drinking water fountains and outlets. Therefore, Verify that no filter is installed prior to including the sampling site within your sampling pool. Do not sample when the school is not in normal use. For example, a summer vacation or any extended breaks. The tap must be one that is typically used for human consumption. For example, drinking water fountains, kitchen sinks, and faucets used for food prep. Bathroom taps are not considered as typically being used for human consumption in a non-residential building. Schools may also use the nurse's sink, teacher's lounge sink, or home economics classroom sink as a sampling site. Be sure to use drinking water outlets that meet tier criteria prior to including any non-drinking water outlets. If placed on reduced monitoring, be sure to still include drinking water outlets in your reduced sampling pool. Verify that all sampling sites are still in commission. Due to the New Jersey Board of Education lead sampling regulations, some outlets may have been taken out of service. Both regulations, lead and copper rule, and the New Jersey Board of Education's lead sampling regulations require sampling of drinking water outlets. Additional sample site collection. If a system distributes more sample bottles than required, the site must be of the highest tier possible. A system cannot distribute additional bottles to Tier 2 sites if all other regular sites are Tier 1. The site requirement is met if the additional sample is collected from a site with a tier criteria that matches the tier criteria of the sites within the existing sampling pool. For example, if the current sampling pool consists of all Tier 1 sites and the additional sample is a Tier 2 site, then it should not be considered for compliance. The system cannot collect a confirmation sample from sites that had a result below the action level. Submit all non-compliance samples on the non-compliance form BWSE 16 if collected outside of the monitoring period's compliance window, or the site does not meet tier requirement and/or is a flushed sample. As a reminder, annual and triannual monitoring is between June and September. The Sample Site Certification Form, BWSC 15 form, is to be completed for any additional sample site collected that is not currently within the system sampling pool. The plan must also indicate how the sample collection is documented. Be sure to enclose a copy of the chain of custody within Appendix E. Sample and validation procedures. Provide the contact information of the person responsible to determine if a request should be made to New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Be sure to outline the procedures for contacting the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Once a sample is analyzed by the lab, it is very difficult to get it invalidated. It is imperative to review all information prior to analysis. Plan of action if an action level is exceeded. This section is required to outline the steps you will take in the event you ever exceed a lead or copper action level. Take note that your system will return to standard monitoring, sampling every 6 months, at the standard number of sample sites immediately following a lead or copper action level exceedance, starting January 1st or July 1st, whichever is sooner. Hopefully, many water systems will not incur an action level exceedance. However, it is very important that they do have the necessary steps in place in the event one occurs. If an ALE occurs, there are specific requirements a system must meet following a lead or copper action level exceedance. If a system does not comply with each of these requirements, a treatment technique violation will be issued. A corrosion control treatment recommendation and a source water treatment recommendation is required 6 months from the end of the monitoring period in which an ALE occurs.
Public education must be implemented within 60 days following the end of the monitoring period.
Lead service line replacement begins the day after the end of the monitoring period. Initial water quality parameter monitoring. If a water system has an entry point to the distribution system that does not have corrosion control treatment installed, the system must conduct initial water quality parameter monitoring if an action level is exceeded. Initial water quality parameter monitoring is required 6 months from the beginning of the monitoring, and source water monitoring is required within 6 months of the end of the monitoring period. This section of the lead and copper template must be completed if the system does not have a separate water quality parameter sampling plan. For additional information, please reference the Water Quality Parameter Sampling Plan presentation. Public education. Non-transient, non-community water systems that are not already conducting public education must begin within 60 days of the monitoring period in which the ALE occurred. Delivery notices are as follows. Post information posters on lead in drinking water in a public place. Deliver pamphlets to each person served by the water system. Notices must be provided to parents, guardians, and school staff. Repeat the above at least once during a calendar year, as long as the system continues to exceed the lead action level. All public education materials must be reviewed and approved by the state prior to distribution. Be sure within this section, if using the lead and copper template, you will only need to check off that you are a non-transient, non-community water system, and indicate whether or not you will use the state-provided templates or one of your own. If you will be using your own, a template must be included within the sampling plan. Monitoring and reporting violation. A monitoring and reporting violation occurs when a water system does not take enough samples during the monitoring period, or if the samples have failed to be reported to the state. The plan must include a protocol for establishing notification to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection within 48 hours after the system learns of the monitoring violation. The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection is requiring systems that incur a monitoring and reporting violation to return to standard monitoring beginning January 1st or July 1st, whichever is sooner. Lead consumer notification. Non-transient, non-community water systems must provide a notice of the individual tap results from the lead tap monitoring to the person served by the water system. Most non-transient, non-community water systems may post a result in a public place. The certification form, Consumer Notice of Lead Tap Water Monitoring Results, BSDW 54, must be submitted to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection with a copy of a completed notice within 3 months following the end of the monitoring period. Include a copy of the lead consumer notice within the sampling plan, or reference the templates on the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection website. Consumer notice. Notify customers who occupy the buildings sampled for lead of their results within 30 days of the system receiving the results. These buildings must have the results posted publicly. Water systems must certify it has completed the public notification requirements. Since you are a non-transient, non-community water system, you will check the second box and indicate whether you would use the state templates or one of your own. Appendix. Ensure the following are attached to your sampling plan before you submit it to the state. Public education materials and lead consumer notice materials do not need to be attached to your plan if the plan references our website. We strongly recommend that you select this option, so if the requirements change, you will not need to revise the template in your sampling plan. What has the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection provided? The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection has provided a plethora of tools and information for the consumer, schools, and public water systems. These links provide documents such as lead and copper and water quality parameter guidance, templates, and forms to assist water systems in completing the sampling plan requirements. Moreover, the schools link contains guidance documents for compliance with New Jersey Board of Education lead testing regulations. Common mistakes found within the lead and copper sampling plan. These include missing signatures, the type of treatment used for pH adjustment, phosphates labeled as corrosion control treatment which have no orthophosphate component, all sample sites that are not identified on the distribution map, failure to identify alternate sample sites, identifying the sample collector, the proper sampling procedures, and tier designation in sample categories. Be sure to visit the following link to better assist you in the completion of your sampling plan.